All right. This is going to be our next difficult part. This is the lower lip. We're going to click a blade. A little bit of air here. Now we can kind of close this hole up as we're done with it. Make sure everything's squeegee. We're going to click a fresh blade. We're going to find the edge here, or not the edge, but we're going to find where it starts to hit this curved area. And we're going to make another one of our L-shaped relief cuts. So we want to go in and get almost to this edge, but not quite to the edge, and then go straight up pretty much. So this looks a little something like this. And I'll cut this out so you can kind of see what we did here. So that's kind of what we cut out. And then now we can kind of take this and kind of feed it around to where it's going to need to go. And you should be able to kind of get this in here now. Just kind of leave that for now. Okay. Same thing on this side. Fresh blade. Shrink this up a little bit. Get it about to the edge. This cut does need to be made a very specific way, or else you will most likely come up short. And just going to show you what we did. Pop this up, try to basically fold it around. Barely made it. All right. I'm gonna zoom out. Back here a little bit. Okay. All right, so we've got all this extra material in here, so what we need to do is kind of pop this up. We're going to start in the middle, and we're going to kind of do what we did up here. Feel the memory, get all just let it shrink. Lift it up like so, and just kind of flatten it out like you're doing a bed sheet. Go down to the next little section. We do not want to pull and stretch over this edge. We just want to hold the film taut. That's the idea. As you get this down, squeegee. So you kind of know where you've gone. This is another part that's pretty tricky as well. Some films, depending on how well this has been stretched in here, you may get a little bit of discoloration. So if you're working with a really sensitive film, not a bad idea to ask the customer if they want to do this in black, this lower lip. And there's a number of images online that show you kind of what this looks like. It's a really clean look. So you're kind of helping the customer getting something a little bit more unique, and you're making your life a little bit easier. I don't see anything wrong with that whatsoever. Okay, squeegee, get all this down. Everything to that back edge. I actually cut this back edge off the car. So I'm going to pull the bumper off and I'm going to cut the back edge while it's off the car. I'll show you why. So we're just going to leave this in here as so for right now. And let's get back to finishing this bottom half, and then we'll go to the top. Actually, we'll go to the bottom. All right. Let's get our glove. So same kind of thing. We want to kind of work the film into here from the top. This is a tough little area here. So we want to do this carefully. We'll work it in. And then we want to try to cut exactly between the two areas. Continue to kind of feed it back as much as we can until you get to the back. If you do this right, you should have a little bit of extra film. So we're going to go in and do our little cut that we talked about, where I try to leave enough to roll under, behind. There's barely any here, but there is some. So, finger, kind of roll this back behind as much as possible. Hit it with heat. The paint is damaged in this area, so I don't want to blast it too much because there's like a, the paint is crunched, and so it's lifted off a little bit, so the vinyl is not sitting perfectly on it. So if I hit this with too much heat, it's going to rip and tear. So I'm just going to roll with that. And we're going to cut this top area. This all down. Okay. Here, we're going to kind of start in the middle just to make it easier on ourselves. Then we're going to go out. And then we're going to finish the other way. Okay. I don't know how I got that little hole in there. That's super weird. Relax this area down. Seal the knife with tape. We're going to go in here and we're going to leave that very tiny little overlap, or a very tiny little extra film to roll around and hug this edge. Some installers that think that they're, kind of like God's gift to installing may think that leaving that extra film is kind of trashy. But why not give yourself more support? It's on the back inside of a bumper. It's not in a wheel well. It's literally an area where you're never going to be able to see. So if you have a little bit of film hanging off and it helps to give the customer a wrap that's going to last longer, why not do it? There's too much ego in this business. Too many people thinking that there's only one way to do stuff, and if you don't do it that way, then yeah. It's one thing I don't like about this industry. A lot of chumps. And a lot of shady people. Alright, so we're gonna pull the knifeless tape. I guess it kind of makes sense. Not that people that work at like oil change places are shady, but it's kind of like that demographic, mid-20s, kind of bounce from job to job. So someone teaches them how to install, so they're learning on the fly. They don't really, for the most part, they're not like gung-ho about it, so they're not willing to put in the effort behind the scenes to get better. And just kind of stay as a mediocre installer. And then as they expand, I'm gonna get off my high horse there. Everyone's different. Okay. So now we just gotta get in here and do this last little cut. I like to heat this and then use a tool of some kind to kind of draw out where the line is. this bumper skirt or this bumper's not like kind of coming apart a little bit, so there's big gaps. So we're just going to trim as cleanly as we can, but you want to go slow here. I'm going to use my orange tool. I'm going to try to get this down. Because there's this gap here, I want to try to get this down around. Never really stays in here though, that's the only thing. So you're kind of at a disadvantage here, because if you cut right to the edge, you can see white a little bit. It's super tiny, and most of you will not see it. Definitely most customers will not see it. But ideally you want to be able to get some film under here, but the problem is that it just doesn't stay. It's just not that sticky of a surface in here. So try your best. Just try to get this area as clean as possible. But just understand that ahead of time. All right, now we got to go back and do our favorite cut here. So shrink this. It's pretty wild. You guys saw how much stretch we had to put on this piece, but when you go to actually heat it to shrink it, there's not a ton of pullback at all. So that's kind of worth noting, because we stretched this whole piece uniformly. You don't really get a lot of pullback. Pullback really happens when you overstretch a very short distance. Like if I were to pick up like here and try to pull it and stretch it. But here, since we stretched over like a foot, the film is much more resilient, and it's much more able to take that stretch without overstretching, versus heating a very small area and trying to pull it a long distance. Here, we pulled a large area and stretched it a short distance, about that much or so, an inch or 2 inches. When it overstretches, it usually is when you take a small area and stretch it a big distance. The vinyl is meant to stretch no more really than 10%. So if you have a 10-inch piece, you can safely stretch it 1 inch, that sort of thing. Keep that in mind. All right, I'm gonna go in here and make this cut. The paint is kind of messed up in here too, so I need to make sure that I don't come up short. Pull the knifeless first here. It's all right. Okay. Let's go ahead and get this knifeless pulled first. Get in the habit of doing this. Heating first. It allows you to get a nice firm seal over the tape, but it also allows you to kind of know whether or not you've overstretched it. Again, we're going to cut in the middle. So this one we ended up with just enough. And we had that little tiny bit to wrap around. So this is, it's worth mentioning, you can do an inlay in here, and in here, and in here if you want. They're high failure rates. I've kind of figured out how to do this now without having issues, so I don't do an inlay anymore, but it's not a bad idea. Just cut like a little strip and kind of just put it in here enough so that you know that you're not going to be short. They're for the most part out of sight, so it's not something that you're going to really see. It's not something that's going to, you know, make the wrap look bad or anything like that. So that's an option you have as well. Just throw just a little inlay in there. Totally acceptable. Okay, that's good. Let's get this knifeless. As you can see, this is pretty hidden. You know, the fact that it's an inlay that's pretty much right in plain sight, right in the middle of a panel, looks really, really good. seam right in the middle of the panel, not an inlay, but yeah, you know what I meant. All right, let's pull this. Notice how I'm pulling perpendicular. I'm not up here, I'm not down here, I'm here. Absolute sure to pull the right piece. As far as make sure to pull the bottom vinyl off, not the top vinyl off. And then with finger. Down. Okay. Yep. We relax it. We take our tool, we kind of draw it out. Tuck it down in there a little bit just so we can kind of know where our edges are and all that good stuff. sure this is down. You can kind of stick your arm in here if you need to help with this cut. Okay. Time for the bottom. Get the camera on the ground for this.